respected Mr. Mahalingam, full-time member SEBI, Mr. Balasubramaniam, CEO of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund, Madam Swati Kulkarni, Executive Vice President UTI Mutual Fund, Mr. Arun Ladha, Managing Director of Jair Ladha Financial Services, and our esteemed audience. A very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this e-conference on fundamental and pandemic agnostic investment. Today we have a panel which is kind of unparalleled. We have a regulator, uh, the senior most officer of the regulator we have with us. We have the CEO of one of the largest mutual funds. We have, and we have the fund manager who has substantial experience. They're actually managing funds, and we have the investment advisor, Mr. Arun Ladha, who is actually at the forefront advising investors on their investments, and actually he faces the investors. And today, um, we have to take on this topic. Post re-election of the BJP government, the market got a reassurance of the continuation of the economic policies. The GDP growth was estimated at 5% for 2019-20 and was expected to continue for the further years. Based on expectation of this further growth, the markets also continued to move upwards. And the broader market index, Sensex, moved from about 37,000 in May 2019 to about 41,900 in January 2020. However, the emergence of coronavirus in January 2020 put brakes on the growth. The spread of the deadly virus all over the world suddenly stopped all activities of investment. Not just investment, it's rather stopped all activities of mankind. All activities in economic activities came to a standstill as the governments grappled with saving lives. Almost all the world went into a lockdown. The stoppage of all activities impacted the stock prices all over the world. The Sensex, which was 41,952 in January 2020, swiftly crashed to 25,981 on 23rd of March 2020, which is a very substantial crash. And this impacted the portfolios of all the investors. The investors all over the world, including India, have been very concerned, and they look at losses. They look at losses on the job front, they look at losses of economic activity, and they also look at their portfolios having shrunk very substantially. In this situation, people are really wondering whether we should continue investing. Should we only concentrate on saving lives, or even continue with the economic activities? Why should we continue with investment? And if we continue with investment, what is a safe way to do it? With so much erosion, whether people should continue? This is a question topmost on everyone's mind. And to answer this question, we have with us this panel. I will briefly introduce the panel members to you. We have with us Mr. Mahalingam, who is the whole-time member of SEBI.
Hello.
He looks after the, the corporate finance department, the foreign portfolio investors, investigations and office of and and education.
I'm just trying to concentrate on what he's talking. Very deeply, I'm able to get.
Yeah. Uh, Prior to the current assignment, Mr. Mahalingam was the executive director in Reserve Bank of India and looking after market operations, both rupee liquidity and foreign exchange operations. In his stint of 34 years with RBI, he has taken on varied roles like chief forex dealer, chief investment dealer, head of debt management. He has also been actively involved in regulation and development of money, bond, and foreign exchange derivative markets in India. His prior assignments in RBI include bank examiner, as also a member of teaching faculty at RBI Officers Training College. He is a master's degree holder from IIT Kanpur and an MBA in International Banking and Finance from Birmingham Business School, UK. We also have with us Mr. A. Balasubramanian, who is the CEO of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund. He brings with him over 26 years of experience in the mutual fund industry as a portfolio manager, both in fixed income and equity. Prior to assuming the role of CEO in 2009, he served as Chief Investment Officer from 2006 to 2009. As MD and CEO of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund, he currently oversees more than 28 billion US dollars worth of investments as Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC. He also oversees global mandates through its subsidiary company in Singapore and Dubai, having assets of exceeding US 1 billion. He is closely associated with key industry bodies. Currently, he is on the board of governors of NISM, National Institute of Securities Market. He is also on the committee of corporate bond management of SEBI. Apart from these prestigious roles, he plays an active role in AMFI as a board of as a director. He was the chairman of AMFI for 2000 from 2016 to 2018. He has done his BSc in mathematics and MBA, apart from being an alumnus of IIM Bangalore and Harvard through our advanced management program. We also have with us Madam Swati Kulkarni.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah. Who is a graduate in commerce and an MBA from Narsi Monji Management Institute. She also holds a CFA charter conferred by the CFA Institute and a certified associate of Indian Institute of Bankers. She has a professional experience of over 29 years, with most of it with UTI. UTI, as you would be knowing, is the first mutual fund in India, which was set up in 1964. And she has over 28 years of experience as a fund manager with UTI. She manages 3 equity funds with assets of over rupees 10,000 crores. We also have with us Mr. Arun Ladha, who is the managing director of JR Ladha Financial Services Private Limited. This entity specializes in money management, portfolio management, and corporate finance. His experience goes back to 1995 when he set up this business. His company advises on assets worth more than 8,000 crores and has offices in Kolkata, Mumbai, Delhi, and Singapore. He has been he's an eminent advisor and receives lot of awards. His vision made his vision um, he got the best financial advisor award by CNBC TV 18. He was also involved in raising short-term funds in the form of ICDs to corporates from family offices of large groups. Further, he advises individuals and HNIs on their portfolios on a continual basis and very successfully. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the profile of our panel, and as you would see, We have a really very well diverse panel. I would now request the panel members to say a few words. I would first request Mr. Mahalingam, full-time member SEBI, to say a few words uh, on the current conference. Over
Thank
to
you.
you, sir.
Am I audible?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Thanks a lot. Thank you for that nice introduction.
Hmm.
And first of all, I would like to profusely apologize for not being able to come on the audio mode. There have been some kind of problem, so I'm coming on the video mode. But I'm quite interested as far as this seminar topic is concerned. It's a very timely topic. All of us know that we are going through pretty difficult times right across the world. This kind of a situation has been unprecedented for the whole world. Whatever may be the predictions that they are coming as far as either the ailment is concerned, about the cure for the ailment is concerned, or the ramifications on the economies, global economy, the impact on the Indian economy, the growth prospects of the global economy and growth prospects of the Indian economy. I don't take it with a pinch of salt, I take it with a bag of salt. For the simple reason that nobody has been in this situation before. So all the predictions are at best guesstimates, whether it is a vaccine for this ailment or whether it is the economic growth going to be U-shaped or V-shaped or W-shaped or whatever alphabet that you can call. I'm not too sure about it at all. Clearly, when we come to Indian economy, I think Indian economy was passing through a fairly difficult stage even before the COVID times. I think our GDP was inching closer to 4% from a real heightened level of almost about 8 to 9%. Almost about 3 years back, it had plunged about 4%. Inflation was in the lower ranges, no doubt, but the fiscal deficit had reached 3.4%, and the government itself was expecting it to close in somewhere about 3.5 to 3.6. That was the story before COVID. The external sector was reasonably okay, it was in reasonable health. So that's the background as far as the macroeconomy is concerned when COVID struck, and it struck all of a sudden without anybody anticipating. So clearly the world economy was not prepared for this kind of an onslaught for which the world had not found a solution, the world had not found a way to fight it back. Given that it's a kind of a pandemic, I think most of the global economies, including India, went into a lockdown mode. We are today closer to the 100th day of lockdown. To be very precise, we are on the 95th day of lockdown. And if you look at 95 days of lockdown, which means almost about 1/4 of an year is gone in this. So, of a $3 trillion economy, I'm not playing any econometric modeling. I'm just saying, out of a $3 trillion economy, if 1/4 of this year is chopped off, and if you say a linear proportionality here, which means 1/4 of the GDP is going to be lost, which means almost about 800 billion GDP is lost of $3 trillion economy. So, if this is going to be the base case scenario, I'm calling this as a base case scenario because we still don't know how the scenario is going to unfold itself in times to come. We don't know how long the entire production facilities across the country, across the globe, will get stuck up. Although we are aware that some of the production facilities, some of the companies have started opening up. We don't know to what extent they have opened up. We don't know to what capacity are they functioning. Clearly, at least in bigger cities like Bombay, the normalcy is still far from achieved with that public transportation still in the halt mode. I think people are still not able to reach their work spots at all. Why I am giving this background is that the GDP is still trending down, is likely to trend down. I am not willing to make a guesstimate of where this GDP is going to be, while the world, at least some of the important organizations across the world, they are talking about minus 4.1 for India. Again, I don't know with what extent we can take this figure at face value. But what is clearly going to come out of this is that the interest rates in India are not going to look up at all, at least in the immediate future. That means for the common investor, if we look at the repo rate of Reserve Bank of India, it's going to be trending down, which means the bank deposit rates are trending down. So on a typical fixed deposit where a common investor was earning about 7 to 8%, he can no longer look forward to that kind of a return. The return that he should be getting attuned to is in the ranges of almost about close in the ranges of 4 to 5%. Now, this is what makes the entire investment world and the capital markets a pretty interesting arena, which means particularly the retail investors and maybe many of the institutional investors, they are not going to be happy with either the normal bank deposit return or the GSEC return. And perhaps people are looking beyond these asset classes into the asset class of maybe the capital markets, which predominantly is made up of mutual funds, alternative investment funds. We have other forms like REITs, InvITs, we have gold. All these asset classes are now attracting a lot of attention. If this seminar is going to be more meant for the common man, I think my simple message to the common man here is you have to be very sure, you have to be very careful before you get on to the other asset class. I mean, whatever may be the asset class, beyond the safer asset class. Now, if you are a new entrant to the mutual fund, or you are already into the mutual funds, I am very sure you must be looking at three basic characteristics of an investment portfolio. Number one, safety. Number two, liquidity. And number three, return. Now, in what order you are going to juggle this is going to be completely be a function of your investment profile. If you are a youngish investor in the age group of about 20 to 30, maybe return is right at the top, liquidity at the second, and safety at the third level. If you are a person who is living out of pension, living out of savings, you are leading a retired life, the entire objectives are turned topsy-turvy. You are going to be looking at safety of the investments, liquidity of the investments, and come to return at the back end. So clearly, your investment objectives are going to be a function of your age profile, your risk appetite, the kind of money that you are willing to dabble, willing to put into risky portfolios. When you get into some of the asset classes which are beyond the bank deposits, as a common investor, I think you need to do a tremendous amount of due diligence. And that due diligence would encompass looking at and understanding the product that you are investing in. Now, I'm not getting into the details of it, but I thought that for a seminar like this, I think the investors would have to do a great deal of due diligence in these difficult times before getting into any asset class far removed from a bank deposit. Now, I am not saying again for a moment, please don't think I'm saying that the bank deposits are the safest or the bank deposits are safe at any time. We know what happens to banks in difficult times. We know what happened to a bank in India in the recent past. We cannot be lulled into a sense of complacency that the bank deposits are the safest. But if you are moving away from the bank deposits in search of a slightly better yield, I think a greater amount of due diligence is called for in understanding the features of the product, in understanding the covenants attached to the product, in understanding the payoffs associated with the product, in understanding the past performance of the product, in understanding who is managing the product. All these are something which warrants a very close study on the part of the investor. I am not sure whether many common investors would like to do this kind of a study. Now, there are people who say that that's why I'm putting this money in the mutual fund, and the mutual fund would do this study for me. Yes, I agree with you. I don't differ with you at all. But then I would like to know, when you get into a mutual fund, do you do this kind of a due diligence study, even as far as the mutual fund is concerned? Do you do this due diligence study as far as the scheme is concerned? Do you do this study as far as the disclosures of the mutual funds are concerned? Are you a person who is keenly looking forward to the disclosures? Do you get into the website of the mutual fund to see how your scheme is doing? What are the products in which it is invested? I would clearly request the investors to look into this. Now, this is a very brief thing. I will come to the detail of it much later when we go into the conversation more. On the other side, the mutual funds are sitting here. I am only addressing the mutual funds here. I am not addressing the other asset classes, because this seminar is meant for the mutual funds. The mutual funds and AMCs owe a lot to the retail investors in these difficult times. While SEBI is doing a lot to bring about a clear-cut understanding as far as each and every scheme is concerned, whether it is true to label and all that, I would definitely look upon the AMCs, I would definitely look upon the trustees as the repository of faith of the common investor. Now, why do I call this as a repository of faith? Look at what happened from the time the global financial crisis started and the interest rates went down, and a large volume of retail investors started thronging towards mutual funds, with the result that the asset under management of the mutual fund industry, it took a jump multi-fold from almost about 5 lakh crores to about 28 lakh crores in a matter of just about 78 years. That is really built up on the pillar of faith that the retail investor is reposing on the mutual funds. Now we are again going through difficult times. Now this is a time when the pillar of faith has to be strengthened by the AMCs, the pillar of faith has to be strengthened by the trustees, and the pillar of faith cannot be allowed to be weakened even by a notch. We know we have gone through very recent mishaps in the mutual fund industry also. That has shaken up the mutual fund industry. Investors are asking the question, is mutual fund good for the retail investor? Clearly, the AMCs, clearly the trustees should stand up in unison and say that, look, we are for the retail investors, and you should be doing all that is within your might to ensure that the faith that has been reposed by the retail investors does not get eroded, that you have to again do a Herculean task to get the retail investors back in their fold. There are a lot of things that you need to do, and I will again come back to it a little later. But all that I want to say is that there is an equal amount of responsibility. There is an equal amount of, I think, a kind of faith repository, that role that you are taken up. It requires a tremendous amount of give and take on your part to ensure that the retail investors stay put, stick to this industry, and they do not go away out of sheer frustration that this industry is something prone to all these zigzags. And clearly a lot depends upon the mutual fund trustees, the mutual fund CEO, the mutual fund manager, and every single officer and employee of the mutual fund industry. So a lot more needs to be done to ensure that I think the mutual fund industry stays on very, very stable track. I would like to close my initial words only with the words that we are in difficult times. A good part of responsibility is there on the retail investor. More of a responsibility is there on the asset management companies and mutual funds themselves to ensure that they are all staying on track. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, may I request Mr. Balasubramaniam, MD and CEO of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund, to say a few words?
Yeah. Good morning to everyone, and thanks to Mr. Mahalingam, who just gave his wisdom and vision for the mutual fund industry and broad the economy, how it's going to shape up post COVID. I think, as he said, clearly, it's this crisis that we have seen in the last 2.5 months or 3 months is something is unique, unprecedented, never happened in the world, at least in our own memory of being in the industry for the last, say, 3 decades or 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 decades. The last that probably the world would have seen the swine flu, which hit the world, and post that we have seen multiple crises. The another crisis, of course, we saw in the 2008 crisis. It is more related to the financial market and originated from America, of course, spread across the global market. And that's the time actually we could see how the regulators and policymakers can come together and work towards bringing back the economy back to normal. That's something something we saw as a unified an action that was being brought in by the G7 countries and G20 eventually, and that's something we saw it. We were just doing some analysis, what the parallel between what we have seen today and what we saw in 2008 crisis. And when we are looking at that, the steps that are being taken by the various central bankers and the policymakers, the event that happened in the month of September 2009, and the action started coming in from the time of November. It took about 2 months for the action to begin, and then they kept on doing many things based on an experimental basis in order to revive the confidence, revive the economic growth for almost a period of 81 weeks. Whereas compared to that, what has come today as a response to the COVID, as a quick reaction that has come from the global central bankers, it's something is amazing. And the way I think the regulator, especially the central bankers, have reacted, the kind of money that they pumped in it's something which is unimaginable. Keeping in mind the COVID impact is quite severe in taking the economy back by about 1.5 2 years, and therefore one need to come back with respect to the growth path, and without getting the global economy into recession. And that's something I think they thought through it, and they have reacted quite substantially in pumping the economy. Not of course boosting the economy in terms of the spending, but definitely ensuring that the liquidity is provided. The way it has been measured, it's almost about economies like US, economies like Germany have spent close to about 10 to 11% of their GDP in the form of providing liquidity and backstop facility to the corporates and provide liquidity banking systems. Therefore, we don't have any issues surrounding the banking and financial sectors, which is the proxy to the most of the economy. That something is actually is given as support that has come from the Fed government. It's something it's never one would have ever thought about it. Such a large sum of money will be pumped in. The second, of course, with the also down with respect to the corporates, at the end of the day, the stock market is driven by the corporates, how they are going to perform the new COVID world. Definitely, the one side, the liquid is being provided in the form of the guarantee systems or in the form of providing direct liquidity to the various corporations in managing the current situations with respect to the cash flows, with respect to the liquidity, and not with respect to, of course, the profitability. Of course, profitability is a function of sales, which will come over a period of time. But definitely, the liquidity is one thing that has been addressed, and across the board, even India also have taken many steps. Then within India, there's one other measure which, of course, I keep taking is the way I think the Reserve Bank of India has reacted from 23rd of March, 27th March. Since then, the 23rd March is the lockdown started, but 27th March is the day where Reserve Bank of India has cut the interest rate and started providing liquidity to the systems, foreseeing that Indian corporates will struggle over the next 2 months because of lockdown, lack of sales, and business not going to be that great. Therefore, during this period, one has to provide greater support. I think first time ever I am seeing in my own lifetime the kind of support that has come from Reserve Bank of India in pumping in liquidity and bringing in the interest rates to as low as about 4% or even less than 4%. It's something it's all intended towards a quick reaction and ensure that the economy, while it suffers in the short term, at least in the medium term and the medium to long term, I think it comes back. So that's something which I see as a big thing that has come as part of the COVID. Second, of course, has come as part of the COVID, and the 2 months of lockdown has also given a greater learning for most of the corporations, including money managers like us, how one should remain efficient during this period of COVID, and the learning that has come, adapting to the change, adapting to the technology, adapting to the focus on reduction of cost in order to ensure that the future the business will be completely different from the way we have been running the business for the last, say, more than last some number of years. And that also is undergoes a change, which is nothing but indirectly bringing in efficiency in the way the corporations are run, the efficiency in which the individuals are driven, the efficiency in which the market will functions, which again ultimately will lead to an improvement in ROE, lead to improvement in the way the companies are managed from the shareholders' point of view. Therefore, one may see some kind of uncertainty. One may see some sense of darkness in everything that we are saying. But definitely, the COVID is actually changing the way the business model is run, and the way I think central bankers are reacting, regulatory policy makers are reacting, both at the government level as well as the central bankers and all regulators coming together and supporting. I think it would eventually give a gradual pickup in the economy, a gradual pickup in the confidence boosters, and that's something which, in my view, will drive the overall economic growth as we move forward. Definitely, of course, one has to live with 2-3 months of uncertainty, because this is not something which I never seen. I think probably first time ever in the life, yeah, companies selling two-wheelers or cars would probably say that I had a zero sales in the month of April. We had a zero sales probably in the month of May. I don't think it would have ever happened in their lifetime. A company having a huge base of operation and then coming out openly and saying that they had a zero sales. That's on the one side. But the other side, companies who are in the companies are on the consumer staples, so they had a huge amount of sales. Because end of the day, of course, food consumptions probably has gone up. Maybe the way I think the whole logistic has functioned, the way I think the companies have actually managed to sell products that are more essential from the consumer point of view. Again, they have seen a different kind of learning and during this period. And even the topic of the discussion is a pandemic agnostic investment. That's something which I think again is happened. Of course, we'll discuss more in detail in the Q&A sessions. But having said that, from a mutual fund point of view, I think one of the points Mr. Mahalingam has mentioned that the SLR, I call it an SLR, which is nothing but a safety, security, return. And it has to be a permanent concept for mutual fund in order to provide a greater experience to the investors. But of course, times like today and also the times like what we have seen in the last 1.5 years, a financial market crisis we saw in India, and followed by COVID, did not give a greater experience, and the kind of volatility that we saw in the month of March and the equity market fell by almost 30%. And no doubt it took the confidence. But this similar kind of situation, we have seen this in the last 3 decades, multiple number of times. There are some events will come and take the confidence of investors, will take the confidence of money managers. At the end of the day, what has actually remained remain steady and remain constant is nothing but a discipline of investing after understanding what is being done with respect to the portfolio, the purpose for which one makes the investment, and stick to the purpose, keeping in mind what is the goal for which they have put the money. And as long as you keep the purpose in mind, as long as the discipline is maintained, over a period of time, experience will turn out to be better than what one assumes. And during this period, it's something which is extremely difficult to take a phone call. I think what would work in good stead is keep a close eyes on SLR, which is the first over safety, then I think focus on return. As long as one doesn't chase return as a concept and then stick to the basic investment principles, probably the experience in mutual funds could be quite good over a period of time. In general, even in the capital market, the experience can be derived much more efficiently over a period of time. I'll stop here, and maybe we'll have more questions and interactions during the Q&A session.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. May I now request Madam Swati Kulkarni to share her thoughts?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show presentation.
Sure.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah. Basically, what I have decided to do is just one second. Yeah. So the quick presentation on the topic, I have outlined my thought process in this way. That is, quickly see the macro impact, what has been the policy response, as both Mr. Mahalingam has alluded to this. Central banks coming together and intervening and providing the much needed liquidity. What have been the market trends and how do we navigate these times, difficult times, with fundamentals, and a bit on the investment style. There are no prizes for the guess that FY21 GDP growth is going to be negative. However, we also expect that because there is demand and supply-led shock to the economy, government revenues are going to get affected. Unlike in 2009, when the economy was doing very well and government was able to provide revenue expenditure support, that is cash and taxes reduction, resulted in boosting the demand. This time government revenues would be severely affected, and therefore fiscal deficit is also likely to increase. However, the inflation, thankfully, agriculture is likely to do well, and food prices are likely to remain under control. Inflation is likely to remain under control. This chart gives you a comparison versus the Indian fiscal packages. You can see here that the countries like Australia, Germany, Japan, and US have resorted to much higher cash transfers. This is a dark purple chart here, which can be seen here that it is almost about more than 7% is the fiscal support that these governments have given. Large part of support has also come in form of loans and guarantees, and therefore on a total basis, even for India, the support looks at 10% of GDP, but actual cash going in the hands of the people is about 1.5% or so. The fiscal expansion is that. As I said, the intervention is pretty clear in this chart. Fed balance sheet expanded by 3 trillion in just a matter of a few days. They used the playbook that was there for GFC. They took a lot of time before the liquidity infusion decision was taken. Lehman had to collapse during that period. So there was a learning, and this time both the Republican and Democratic Party has come together, and in a record time they decided to lend this support. So their balance sheet now is in excess of 7 trillion. European Central Bank also spent about 1 trillion for extending the support. So was the Bank of Japan, which came up with about 500 billion support. So the support was very much there, and the risk aversion, which initially set in the markets, reflected in dollar index, of that moving from below 94 to about 103. That reflects the risk aversion because everybody preferred to move to dollar-based assets. That has since normalized with the liquidity being strong in the systems and the government intervention, and more to do with the support that or the confidence that investors have. You can see that movement in risky assets here. Uh, Brent fell almost about 60% in the first quarter of the year, calendar year, and that recovered quickly to about 49% as we see the intervention coming, liquidity improving, and so was the case with the most of the risky assets. And naturally, the gold actually didn't have that much gyration because gold is again thought of a safe haven by most of the investors. Looking in the domestic markets, you can see here that there wasn't much difference between how the large caps or mid caps or small cap reacted. You can see this from the fall in the various indices here listed here. And consequently, you don't get any idea about which capitalization would do well or has done well because the recovery was also very much similar. And even if you see 5-year returns, the differential is not much, though we tend to have a lot of debate around which is the best, product that one should invest now, given the market condition. I think this table clearly says that you don't get much clues about which particular segment should be preferred, except for small cap, perhaps that has even on 5-year basis has destroyed value to the extent of 3%. If you look at Nifty 500 index and bifurcate that index between large cap and mid and small cap, that is the top 100 stocks are classified as large cap, and SEBI categorization also refers this as the large cap space. The fall in the large cap was more moderate than what we saw in the 400 stocks. And here clearly this chart shows you that the fall was much higher for the mid and small cap stocks. So definitely mood swings that we have seen in the market actually reflect that there is no point in predicting where the markets could be when they'll recover, because you would have never imagine yourself in a month of March. It was like everything was looking so gloomy that people would have actually acted hastily, also some of them. But from April and May, and almost most of part of it was recovered, and now we are perhaps down only about 10% from Jan levels. So I want to just emphasize here that predicting market is actually a futile exercise. We should look at something more to deal with the risk from time to time. Now let us look at this table, which gives a slightly longer term performance of various segments. Top 100 versus again next 400. You would see that here the negative returns across 1, 3, and 5-year period, when we are seeing in this current period of pandemic and looking back 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, it reflects that the percentage of stocks giving negative return is far higher. That to an extent indicates that the risk could be higher. What also disturbs me is, or one should be cognizant of the fact also, in last 1 year there are 57% of the stocks in 100. That means 57 stocks have given negative return, 42 stocks have given negative return on 3-year basis, and 28 stocks have given negative return on a 5-year basis also. So are there any value destructors sitting, and those could be sitting across the market cap. That is the point which I want to make. Looking at the sector performances, and many of you would know, but I just thought it could be a good preamble to start with, that the perceived risk in certain sectors has clearly turned out to be much higher. You can see here the yellow bars are the fall period, and the recovery is the purple, and the gray bars tells you where the prices currently are versus what they were in January. So BankX, that is banks, down 20% or more compared to what they were in Jan. Whereas naturally, subsequent part of my presentation, these are like FMCG, healthcare, IT. These seems to have contained the fall, and in fact, healthcare has done better. Only sector which reflects positive returns since over the Jan period also. Slightly longer term also here, it only indicates that there are sector specific challenges and risks and opportunities too, which reflects in the long term price performance. And certain sectors, again, I would emphasize here that which sectors which have a good amount of cash flow generation and high return on the capital that they invest tend to do well long period of time. So how do you navigate during this period? While it is one easiest way is to move to safest asset class, but that may not give you the required capital appreciation or the wealth creation that we have seen. Even if you look at the levels of Sensex, let's say in 2003 or 2005, and look at where the levels are today. So it's almost 6-7 times higher than those levels. And every time we had a crisis, we think that the risks are higher, but then those are the opportunities to look at these crises as an investment, because those who can have patience to stay put together for a long term, definitely that could actually help in terms of better capital appreciation as well. So asset allocation approach is what one of the fundamentals that one should navigate this risk through. But coming back to the pandemic, this only gives you a adequate experience that risk can come as a nasty surprise and from anywhere and any time. So we should, when we build a portfolio, we should be aware of that. And uncertainty is definitely there to linger. You could see that there are questions or doubts in mind when this infection will peak out, will there be a second wave as the economy opens up, and therefore consequent lockdown again? Could there the customer behavior would change, whether they'll save more or they'll come and spend more because they themselves are not sure about their lifespan? Or the borrower behavior, would there be a moral hazard with the moratorium that we are seeing? Will there be a tendency to not repay in time, because if in times of crisis there will be some big brother or a godfather would emerge and give us regulatory forbearance? Migrant labor is an issue. We have job and income losses. Fiscal support, whether it will come in the right quantity in the right time, those are the problems. MSME space and so on. You can actually list and pile on the uncertainty that could play on, and therefore one cannot really say when the markets would recover or economy would recover. But yeah, we will have to take a view, and we should think about what we can do to deal with this volatility. So clearly, there has to be a portfolio approach. You cannot, mitigate completely. We cannot have a foolproof solution to manage the risk, but we can only mitigate this risk very well. So, how do you do that? I think what the simple answer, but very difficult to practice, is moving back to fundamentals. We have to build an investment rationale based on the factual data and not mere the thoughts or expectations or the themes that are likely to play. Companies actually are valued as a going concern. You think of the company, let's say like Hindustan Unilever. Now, I'm not I'm just giving this as an example, not soliciting any kind of positive view or otherwise. But these companies are there for 100 years. Don't you think there would have been so many ups and downs during these periods? If I look back in my own career from 1992 till date, there have been many various instances where the markets have corrected more than 20% and also has remained in the correction for a volatile phase for more than 1 year also. But looking back, those were with the opportunities to stay patiently invested. And now, of course, SEBI also coming up with a very clear groundwork as far as the framework as far as where each fund is categorized, and bringing in that discipline actually gives you a fair amount of confidence that funds will not have one name and invest somewhere else. So that style purity will also actually give us confidence. And what I want to insist on this point is that when you look at the history of a company or the future of a company, these periods of difficulty actually have a small impact on the future cash flows that they would continue to generate, and those cash flows is nothing but what shareholders they invest in equity for those cash flows. So when you look at present values of those cash flows, the current pain or any pain which comes with the economic shock would have some impact, maybe about 10%, but not something which would actually make the investment argument weak. So the questions to ask, or what we should know, is that whether the company is generating cash flow consistently or not, and whether it is earning high return on capital employed on the capital that they invest, and that return should be operating cash flow may not be positive. There are chances that these tend to improve, because when such things happens, the valuations could be very, very attractive. Now, are you able to see the file?
I think the sharing got dropped.
Hello?
The sharing got dropped, Swati.
Dropped, is it? Okay.
Yeah, even the voice also sometimes it breaks. I think the last slide that we saw was that 100 companies, the negative return.
Are you?
Yeah, now also is not coming.
Oh, it's coming?
No.
Just a minute.
Maybe you have to probably show during the Q&A time otherwise.
I think, Swati, it is taking a bit of time. Perhaps when we are doing the question answers, that time we can restart with the slide that you have missed out.
Stop for some reason. I will.
Yeah, I think you're connected.
Okay, so I will spend close. Yeah, I'll just.
I think your voice connectivity
take it.
Your voice goes and comes.
Voice connectivity is also low. The voice is breaking. I think what we'll do, we will request Mr. Arun Ladha to share his thoughts, and thereafter we'll see while we take the question answers at that time. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. Now, may I request Mr. Arun Ladha to share his thoughts?
Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are. You are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. It's my pleasure and happiness to join this August company where we are discussing this matter of fundamental and pandemic agnostic investment. We have heard Mr. Malingam, whole-time director of SEBI, Mr. Balasubramaniam, market veteran in Birla Mutual Fund, and Ms. Swati Kulkarni, long-term fund manager in UTI Mutual Fund. As we all know, 2020, we have only passed 6 months. It has been a hell of a ride. Market has gone up, gone down in a precarious manner. The investor has lot more questions to answer than what we were 1 or 2 years back. Though investors have seen many past events like 2008 crisis or 2014 temper tantrum of Fed, but investors in this time have fared much more astutely and intelligent than the last few crises. But what I believe that each and every crisis there lies a difficult opportunity indeed. So far, for investors' perspective, also this crisis has given them a clear signal that how to approach to investments in a better manner. Investors have seen such precarious times that they would not have thought of 1 or 2 years back. Though market has gone up substantially because foreign investors have put in a large amount of money in past 3 months, and that has made the market move very sharply. But investors' emotions, which has been largely affected by this pandemic, is going to play a bigger role in the mind when they're thinking of investment right now. As Mr. Malingam has pointed out, that going ahead, interest rates will go down or will remain soft for quite some time. The expectations of investors need to be moderated. So, to handhold investors' hand during this crisis, we have taken many steps so that investors are aware that what can happen to the market during different times. We have held regular webinars and on calls and brought many fund houses to the door of the investors through new technology so they can understand and take best possible decision in the current times. I think this crisis time has also taught us that how do we use technology or leverage technology to get better and more answers. Though Indian economy has seen a windfall due to falling crude prices, but what Mr. Malingam told us that one third of the quarter's GDP has just been thrown out of by this pandemic. So catch up with this thing is not an easy answer for anybody. And markets have grown, are going up and up due to F2's inflow of money to a large extent. Mutual fund industry has grown in last 5 years, virtually has doubled. I think this pandemic will teach us and will make us learn how to keep our calm and ensure investors that they take best possible decisions. This pandemic will also teach us that investors should not chase only returns. They should take best possible informed decisions in the current circumstances. AMCs have played a very good role in creating education on investors that how to approach it and how to make our investments in a more diligent manner. That means to ensure that our risks are spread over and we take only risk which we can digest also. Any person to put all money in equity or all money in debt has to take in the light only what returns expectations, how much volatility they can digest, and what they can should take action when the times are bad. I am fully assured that this seminar will help investors also to understand how to take forward their future actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arun. That was very enlightening. You are mentioning that investors should stay calm and take informed decisions. I think that is a lesson which investors should carry. Now, I would take this webinar forward, and I would like to ask certain questions to the panel members. So, Mr. Malingam, sir, are you available? I think he's not there at the moment, so we will. Mr. Balasubramaniam, how do you see the measures taken by policy makers in the last 3 months? How do you see the economy going forward from here?
Yeah, I think interesting, Mr. Gupta